this, man. He's like a butterfly flapping his wings deep down in the forest, man. It's gonna cause a tree fall like 5,000 miles away, man. There ain't nobody seeing nobody. Man, it seems like you don't even know, man. It's like you're born into this world, man. And you got like that, man. The dust and wind, man. Or like a dang old candle, man. It don't matter, man. It's like these old things.
All right, Luthemplaer, welcome back to the Jay Burden Show. How you doing, man?
Hi there. Well, still a bit shocked at the events of the past week, but at least we have the advantage of having a clearer picture than the first news outlets.
Yeah. So I think that, I'm not sure how you found out, but as terminally online as I am, I was using social media for work, and so just going through finding a source for something, and I start seeing first like just unsourced tweets, right? Shots reported at Charlie Kirk event. It's like, all right, whatever. That happens all the time, right? As I'm sure you remember, there were shots reported at dozens of different HBCUs at the same time. Nothing ever came of it, right? So I didn't even notice anything. And then, of course, the initial footage, which is just people, running in terror, and then, sadly, the somewhat gruesome footage of, Kirk being shot. And
yeah,
I'm
I knew. Sorry, I knew pretty quickly that it wasn't going to end well for him. Even with the blurry photos, what I saw, I was like, well, that's going to be a national controversy for a month.
Oh yeah, well, not to be grim, but like, that color of blood in that quantity, and the fact he was shot in the neck, like, if he was shot in a trauma center, it would be a near run thing. Like,
yeah.
As awful as it is to say, like, without getting too much into the gory details, like, once you saw the footage, you were like, oh no, like, it would take a miracle.
Yeah. And it was pretty shocking, and I was immediately bracing for the disreputable leftoids celebrating it. I kind of started reporting it very quickly, and I saw a lot of accounts got closed down for just being absolutely disgusting. I am a whole monitor in that regard. I'm kind of like, I'll do it for any side that just acts disgusting. And I'm glad that there was ramifications for the way in which some people were behaving around it. Um, I I I do find it shocking. I'm not gonna. This is not gonna be a popular take, but it kind of felt like the most mature response to it was freaking Fuentes of all people, which shocked me.
Oh yeah, no, I felt the same way. I'm not an irrational Fuentes hater, but he's not really my bag. I don't really pay attention
Yeah,
to what he says, but he is. He's sparred with Kirk often, and I thought the way that not only he took some time out, didn't make an immediate statement, and then, as you said, right, made a very, very mature and compelling response. Like, I'll put it this way, like, if that's what he is becoming, like, that's a very strong sign. Because I thought we saw, all of the sort of charisma and ability you see in all of his work mixed with a maturity that is often lacking. And I think the combination of that, it's like, all right, like, that was about the best response possible.
yeah. There's been a quiet campaign behind the scenes, and maybe I'm even part of it, to like encourage him to grow up a little bit. And I'm glad to see he's starting to. I hope his followers follow suit. Just like, I think the tactic of just like, bro, you say you're a Catholic, act like it, and it seems to be working. He's like a lot less spectacle, I suppose. And the thing I came from this away from this is like, maturity in politics is definitely to avoid the spectacle and to be more reasonable when tragedy happens. I think that, obviously the left has I call this like there's murder fantasies on the left. They have a lot of murder fantasies, and it gets them acting absolutely disgusting when they come true. And I'm convinced the average American, when they see someone displaying their murder fantasies, it turns them off to whatever that politics is. And obviously, the left took a massive L in terms of exposing their own murder fantasies. But there were a lot of right wingers. So I understand the call for justice. Obviously, the call for, like, we know what organizations did this, we know what groups of people did this, and there must be FBI raids to stop it. But it was also very positive, I think, to see a certain like a maturing of, like, like, if the right really is going to try to be in control, it has to act the part. Now, I am hoping that more than vague threats come out of this, and that actual investigations are done into what is ultimately a domestic terrorist organization. That is what it is. I think the country's at the point where, if the government can't take down domestic terrorist organizations, its days are really numbered.
Right. Well, I mean, that's what is the basis of all authority? It's violence and the monopoly on violence. And if something like this happens, right, while you were president, if your best, or if one of your friends, right, sort of your mentees, can be assassinated, and that network, assuming it exists, which I assume it does, but it's still, I guess, a possibility that he acted alone. Well, are you really the president? Are you really in charge? Because that's a huge challenge. And in a way, to me, I think that the biggest losers of this, are certainly the political left, but also, to be brutally honest, the FBI came out of this looking extraordinarily incompetent.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they didn't find him. His dad basically said, like, turn yourself in. And so he turned himself in. Right? Like, the FBI didn't use their, like, secret Palantir satellites to, like, track this dude by, like, I don't know, his, like, light in the loafer's walk or something like that. Right? Like, it was the oldest technique in the book.
Yeah, it was a total breakdown of, like, institutional prestige, I guess would be the word. Like, we view these institutions as, but it's been found that the biggest deterrent from crime, it's the ability to quickly catch the criminal. If people don't think they can get away with it, they won't do it. And what the FBI revealed in its fumbling is that you can probably get away with it if you betray your family. If that guy didn't have a connection to his father, or if his father didn't know him as well, he would have gotten away with it. That's what we've seen. And I think it should be a wake-up call in terms of, like, there is a certain lack of competency in the institutions. We already knew they were incompetent under the left, but now we're seeing, even under the right, you don't get a higher quality of persona. You actually get, like, the same old incompetence.
Well, look, especially when it's like, you could make the argument that there are some segments of Trump's government that seem to be run in a highly competent, aggressive way, right? At least on the front end, you could look at something like Doge, right? Basically taking these, like, 20-year-old kids hopped up on Adderall, giving them, access to every Excel spreadsheet in the world, and basically told them to, like, go cause havoc, right? Whereas you look at the FBI, which, one, it's the FBI, right? We've known about their insane corruption for decades at this point. And you give them to a podcast host and a man named Patel, and okay, are we shocked about this? Are we surprised? It's I think that it's actually a very real danger for the American system writ large, because, look, part of what I think the advantage for Trump in 2024 as regards the system, right? Part of the reason why they didn't push particularly hard to keep him out of office this time is I think there was a general recognition that, look, like, we are in a crisis of legitimacy. People look at us as if we are, illegitimate and incompetent rulers. So if we put Trump in, he will basically get MAGA back on side, and so you see this even in the way that, Patel and Bongino have talked about the FBI, right? We're in our new era of transparency. We're going to show you the Epstein files. We're going to show you the JFK files. We're going to do all of this. It's a new era. The FBI isn't bad anymore. And they have just completely mismanaged the PR campaign side of it. But they are also giving up the "we are the scary G-men, and if we're on your tail, you're doomed." And it's like,
yeah,
that's a very important part of soft power, right?
yeah. I mean, not to be a history nerd yet again, but I'm reminded of can I do a little Roman history stuff?
Of course.
So like I've talked on this show enough times about the institutional crisis that happened when the Goths crossed the Rhine in 406 AD, but I haven't said a lot about the previous institutional crisis when they entered the Eastern Roman Empire, like decades prior. Because even in the late Roman Empire, everyone kind of knew that, like, the prestigious institutions, the prestigious cities, the prestigious wealth, it's all in the Eastern Empire. And the West had become, like, even by the third or second century, everybody kind of knew the West was falling behind. And so it was like assumed when the Goths were entering, I think it was like sometime like the 360s or 370s or 380s, I forget. But like when the Goths crossed into the Eastern Empire, into Thrace, everybody kind of assumed that the more prestigious institutions of the Eastern Roman Empire could handle this immigration crisis, and they completely fumbled it. They brought in too many people without regulation. They couldn't handle the numbers. The border patrols collapsed. The Goths raided Thrace, and there was the famous Battle of Andropolis, where, like, the Goths nearly made it to Constantinople, and it would have been the end of the Eastern Empire had they done so. And it took, like, Western intervention in the East to tie up this crisis. And it was a bit of a shock to the system at the time, because it was like, well, wait a second. I thought, like, the Eastern Empire was the prestigious institutions. I thought they could handle the stuff that the West always fumbles. But it was revealed that, in fact, they couldn't. That even under higher amounts of wealth, better equipment, more structured institutions, they fumbled just as much. And there was a certain revelation in the Roman Empire preceding when they would eventually cross into the West, that this empire just doesn't have the institutional capacity to deal with crises anymore. And there's a historian I've been reading, John Matthews. He wrote Western Aristocracies and the Imperial Court. Earlier inspiration for that, Charles Paul Minor Gallic aristocrats. I mentioned that paper a couple times. But he writes that there came a time where, after suffering so many failures and so many crises, the common Roman person had begun to despair the Republic. And this is a play on there was a Latin saying, like, it translates to don't despair the Republic, in the sense that, like, it was basically their version of trust the process. So they had a phrase that basically meant trust the process. It was don't despair the Republic, like, trust that the Republic will manage the crisis, will get things done. And at this point, people had begun to despair the Republic. It's a play on the idiom, like, no, we are going to despair about how shit things are getting. And it was kind of like the first moral fracturing that was required for people to start expanding their minds on, well, what would an alternative solution to government look like? What would an alternative to the Roman Empire look like? And it came in order for that acceptance that the old thing was dying. They first had to enter the moral panic of, well, the Republic really is despairable. It's no longer able to do this. And I think what this administration risks in its incompetence, playing, their incompetence is piling on top of Biden's incompetence, and people are starting to really wonder, well, like, what the hell is the point of all this? Like, what are we doing? What is going on? You can't run a continent-wide country on promises to prosecute threats, on promises that stuff will get done. You can't govern that scale on an idiom like trust the process. People no longer trust the process. They want to see what results that result in them feeling safer and able to build something without fear. And it's really on the Trump administration to do better than the Biden and his own first administration. And it sounds like they're planning on doing things. It sounds like they're planning on RICO charges against organizations, and I understand that will take time, but it's still like, why are you still going to baseball games and stuff like that, Trump? Like, why are you still pretending like it's the 90s and like it's still, we can still have, the good things? I'm reminded of that quote when Mary, I think Mary or Pippin, one of the Lord of the Rings characters, is like, there isn't going to be a Shire if this doesn't change. And that, does Trump have that mindset that you have to have a despair for this because it's not working?
Yeah, I think that there is something to be said for that, right? That at a certain point, it's like, well, look, like, you're in power. Make it happen, one way or another. Now, I will say, I've been very encouraged, but what I would consider sort of the change in tone and tenor, because particularly as regards both the death of this, Ukrainian girl and then Kirk back to back, it's sort of like the perfect 1-2 punch of sins of omission and sins of commission, right? The kind of like negligence of the liberal order, and then it's, in kind of aggressive fringes, both, back to back. Honestly, I've been very encouraged by the amount of cancel culture that's been happening after this. I mean, that's sincere, right?
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like, look, like, sure, would it be nice to live in a world without that tactic? Yes. I mean, it would be nice to live in a world without nukes. However, look, this is how it is right now. And conservatives, and you've seen a bunch of this, the kind of like tactical libertarianism of like, oh, this is wrong. It was wrong when they did it. It's wrong when you're doing it. Like, okay, I get it. That's a logically consistent argument. But it's like running into a burning building with like the fire code, being like, well, this isn't supposed to happen. It's like, well, okay, yeah, sure. I'm aware of that. But look, like, here's where we are. And to me, that's encouraging for a couple reasons, because one, that does have a chilling effect, right? It does make people much, much more careful about, coming after you and yours. For business owners, it's probably kind of a relief, right? Getting rid of the most irritating employees. Now you have an excuse. But also, right, I think it indicates a willingness to sort of engage in some dirty boxing that I haven't really noticed from the right wing in America. Which again, it's like, if you want to win, if you want to be in charge, that's sort of what you have to do. I'm very curious to see, one, extent of the investigation into this guy, because there are just a lot of really suspicious things about it, right? Like all of the other trans activists who made sort of cryptic threats to Charlie Kirk, like within the 24 hours before, right?
Yeah.
Like, and who knows? That might just be a coincidence. It might just be mentally ill freaks constantly saying nasty things about Charlie Kirk. That is a possibility. But at the same time, when you consider at least some allegations of, people helping him drive to or from the event, or to kind of, hide him, unknown, right? Those could be incorrectly reported. He could have been a complete lone actor, but I'll be curious to see, the quality of the investigation into that. So Luthemplaer, what do you think about the desire to frame this on the Groypers?
I mean, there was a lot of attempts in the early hours, I guess, to desperately find some non-leftist lolcow to blame. And I think every attempt has pretty clearly flunked in the presence of the real evidence that this guy, I mean, he just sounds like your typical soy soy zoomer leftist. Clearly, dating a trans person, saying he doesn't like normal people that people call fascists because it's the propaganda at work. And it kind of fell flat on its head. I think a lot of this, I wouldn't discount some of the astroturfing of these claims to foreign intervention, like a foreign state seeing an opportunity to make the left look louder and stronger than it really is, with botting likes and artificially pumping things onto AI generated newsreels in order to inflame tensions. I would not entirely discount the possibility that a foreign nation, who knows which one, might have been doing that to inflame the country's state, because that was one of those crossroad moments of political breakdown. And I mean, if I was an agitative power to the United States, I would take advantage of that. I would inflame those tensions and try to drive it into social unrest. However, it flunked because I think whatever force, be it foreign or domestic, was I think clearly artificially pumping those claims, be it always a Groyper, always a MAGA, it clearly landed flat. It was clearly, you only saw big accounts claiming that with botted likes, but the common response was bullshit. This is bullshit. You didn't really see a large volume of small accounts with real tangible networks of engagement falling for it. So
well, and look,
yeah.
I'll say this, I am not a Groyper. I am not even necessarily inclined to give them the benefit of the doubt, but it is, I'll be honest, man, really clear this had nothing to do with them.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I guess I'm glad it didn't, but it's not like I'm frantically trying to defend Fuentes or the Groypers. It's I don't really have an emotional dog in this fight, but it's even the very tenuous grasp of oh, well, he was on Discord, which I'm one, that's a very bad argument for saying he's a right-wing extremist if you know anything about Discord, right? Or then it'd be well, his parents were conservative, and I'm that's another bad argument. And then they were yeah, but he's white. And I'm now that's the worst argument you could possibly make for being a fan. No, but in all seriousness, right? There was no chance. There was just no chance.
Yeah, and it feels like once the FBI put out that his transgender boyfriend was cooperating, a lot of people shut up after that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, there were occasionally a few, because Fuentes has occasionally been a member of transgender group chats, so there were some funny jokes about that, but it's all gallows humor. I think it's pretty clear this guy was a leftist, and any argument counter to that appears to just be cope. It's just cope.
Well, I think one of the other interesting things, and I don't remember if you and I have talked about this, but both of us have individually spoken about this, that really since the election, honestly, let's be honest, before the election, really starting in my mind, kind of once it became clear that Joe Biden, well, and when I mean clear to everyone that Joe Biden was a literal shambling corpse of a man, that the left has really lacked a narrative. And they've been in sort of narrative free fall for quite some time. And, after the embarrassing loss of, Kamala Harris, who honestly, man, Kamala Harris is she's a bigger humiliation ritual pushed on the Democrats than Joe Biden was on the whole country. Get excited for this. To say how great she's going to be, say how she's going to win all 50 states, and then just what everyone who wasn't, horribly, mind controlled, saw, turned out to be true, that she was a very bad candidate. They were kind of left holding the bag. But really, like, there's been no central narrative. They've sort of been aimlessly wandering around. We saw a little bit of one coalesce around anti-Elon, but that didn't last very long, right? At best, 90 days. And then the next has been sort of a vague pro-immigration, anti-ICE sentiment, but even then, that's not very organized. And you have these kind of two dramatically different, points on the spear, right? The boomer kind of no king stuff versus the, like the Raza style, like anti-ICE protests. But even those have kind of calmed down. And it sort of just seems like they really have nothing. And this has been such a devastating blow. Not only, that they are stuck, being forced to pay the social price of this, but also that for the first time in their life, they are facing cancel culture and they don't have a narrative to fight back on that front.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting thing to watch them get boxed into a corner like this.
Yeah, because I mean, in many ways they had it coming, I guess I could say. Because
100% they did. I feel no sympathy for them.
Yeah, and it's I in many ways I would say, like, I won't. I'm sad it's happening, but I won't get in the way, right? And I mean, most people aren't sad it's happening, but in many ways, like this disgusting culture that we already know they hate us. We already know every policy they have is designed to hurt us. We already know they just want to see us suffer. And there's only so long that kind of a unfair advantage can go on, where, like, even if the Trump is inept, the people they brought in are angry enough, and there because they're angry, that they will just cause this mess on their own without imperial orders, if you will. And in many ways, it's like they really need a wake up call of how disgusting they are. Until the left recognizes that they're disgusting, they're going to keep kind of erecting higher walls to ignore reality. And there really just needs to become a time when I mean, maybe they never do. Maybe they never come to the terms of the fact that they are disgusting. They literally have attempted to warp reality to tell them they're not disgusting, right? Like, control every institution and cancel every viewpoint that denies that tries to say they're disgusting. But, like, they are disgusting. The way they think, the way they act, the way they hate, they are disgusting. And at a certain degree, I think to realize, there were jokes of like the BBC thing, "Are we the baddies?" And they're starting to kind of, like, some of them on the fringe, the fringe of the far left is the moderate left. But, like, those blurry lines between the moderate and far left, they're starting to recognize, yeah, we're disgusting. Nobody likes us. Nobody wants to support us. Even like the mainstream Democrats who are using us for foot soldiers, they don't want us anymore.
Well, and that's honestly why I think that, obviously the Charlie Kirk assassination is, the big attention grabbing case. But in my mind, right, the first killing, the Irana the Ukrainian girl, I can't say her name.
Yeah.
But that's almost more, it's almost more disturbing in a way. And, like, both of these back to back are just, like, such a devastating 1-2 punch for that narrative, because it's like, look, like, almost nobody believes in that level of political violence, but literally nobody, except for, like, a certain, like, ultra ethnically motivated fraction, looks at, some 110-pound white girl getting, horribly murdered on public transport. And so both of these, it's basically like, you were not only ugly, but you produce just senseless human horror, right? That, like, you don't even need to be like a Thomas Carlyle poster like me to look at a guy who's been arrested 14 times, and say that guy probably shouldn't be allowed to do that. Take what conclusions you will from that. And One of the other things I was listening to Morgoth and Endeavor. They do a movie podcast together, which is honestly really good. It's very cozy. I think they do an episode a month or something. But I was listening to them talking about Silence of the Lambs while I was mowing the grass today, and
Okay.
they were talking about how Hannibal Lecter when they're tracking down Buffalo Bill, right, the transsexual serial killer. One of the things he
Yeah.
notices is he's like, oh, he smashed all the mirrors. That means there must be something there must be something deformed about him. He doesn't want to see himself doing it. And when you're talking about the ugliness, right? Like I don't want to see. I don't want you to reflect this back at me. I think that's part of it as well. And like the desire to basically like just move on and cover up and like get away from these stories, or to like frantically shuck responsibility, to frantically try and dodge it. I think it's like they don't want to be pinned for this, even though they ought to be, they deserve to be.
Yeah. It's hard to admit some people are made evil, but you still have free will.
If only there was some guy, I mean, maybe he could even like rule like some Dutch city, but a whole philosophy built on that.
Yeah, I believe I have mixed feelings about free will, but I'm no Calvinist. I'm a Catholic. I just feel like there was a certain yeah, there was a certain mental virus, if you will, that got into the minds of our leaders in the 70s. That anybody can be fixed, anybody can be made equal to the best of us, and into the 80s and 90s, it started becoming, okay, maybe not everybody can be made equal to us, but we still have to like go out of our ways to design societies so they can exist in it. And now we're at the point where the majority of the population feels we do not want these people in our society. That is the majority opinion, and the politicians haven't yet grasped that there are people in this world that we do not want in our society because they kill, steal, and destroy. We don't want to lock them up. We don't want to do it. I don't want to say we'll kill them. I know a lot of people say that, but like we want them like tossed in a pit and throw away the keys, or like a desert island, throw them all in there and let them figure out their bullshit belief systems. Whatever the solution is that a government will inevitably have to deal with this reality because it will become the majority, and then you can't stop it from becoming a democratic issue. But like there's going to come a time when the voter is basically just going to like we're not dealing with this anymore. Those are people that kill, steal, and destroy. We want them out of our society. Doesn't matter if they're some immigrant or trans or this or that. Like it will be generalized into a like a stereotype, and then if you even like come close to that stereotype, that government to come will merit it enough to exile you and kick you out of society. And in many ways, I almost want to say like the concept of prison was kind of like this idea that like, oh well, we can reform you, when like the older European idea is exile or death. Like you're either going to leave the society or we're going to stop you from existing, and there's no other solution.
No, and I'm kind of fascinated by Crime and Punishment, because you're 100% right about prison and the Quakers, who, I mean, I'm going to be honest, the QQ, if you will, thoroughly underaddressed. Quakers are the eternal liberals, like just the worst people in the world. And all of their martyrs, it's like, well, was they a martyr, or was it just you were so irritating that eventually someone just lost it? Look, all I'm saying is if you've been kicked out of that many cities and states, maybe it's not everyone else's problem. And I mean that in only this one instance. But in all seriousness, right? That is exactly their philosophy just towards prison, right? And so in early prisons, effectively, you would just be locked in a hole with a Bible until you fixed yourself. Or later, like in Victorian prisons, they would have them do work, but it would be like pointless work. So for instance, I can't remember what the machine was called, but it was literally like a box with like two cranks on either end, and inside was like a paddle and a bunch of sand, and you just have to crank the sandbox for days as your punishment. And yet, like, sure, it was like, I'm sure it was probably a pretty effective punishment. Like, I don't know, I probably wouldn't want to do whatever I did again. And we can understand that for like smaller stuff that, that kind of, embarrassing, corporal punishment has long been recognized as effective. But like, I don't know, when you're a like dreadlocks wearing, knife murdering psychopath, maybe we could have addressed this problem in an earlier stage. And to your point about exasperation, I think that the exasperation towards the criminal justice system, specifically as regards judges, right? And judges who will let, shall we say, criminals of certain backgrounds reoffend and reoffend and reoffend, and at every possible chance give them, cashless bail, give them a reduced sentence, give them, as this guy was, alternatives to prison. It's like, well, I mean, look, man, like, this is how you get community policing, if you understand my metaphor here. And like, if you look at places like South Africa, where there is basically no rule of law, like if you were caught, stealing, or if you were caught doing something particularly execrable, the natives will put a tire around your neck and set you on fire. Like, it's brutal. Like, it's genuinely horrible. And it's like, I guess my feeling about this is the same feeling I have towards the people on the left kind of naively calling for political violence, which is like, look, civilization is a delicate thing. Like, it is a very difficult thing to, keep working. And to so cavalierly have this attitude of like, well, it doesn't matter. Like, it's good for my personal power, or it's good for, my tribe, right? To sort of, get one over. It's like, well, genuinely, this is why the left as a political force needs to be gotten rid of, because it is entropy. And just building entropy into the system, like, look, a certain amount of it's natural. It happens to everything man makes. But it's like that, you wouldn't necessarily, if you were running a car, like, just build in entropy, right? Design the car to break itself slowly over time. Whatever machine. I mean, look, there are quite literally, that's delayed deliberate obsolescence, or whatever they call it, right? And it's recognized as a bad thing. But like, why would you do that with your government? Why would you do that with your culture? And one other thing that I think is worth talking about with this is the sort of rise in organized political violence. You mentioned the Antifa connections. But do you remember, I think it was Plano, Texas, or maybe Prairie something, Texas, the 10 Antifa guys who tried to ambush an ICE facility?
Yeah, that's been like zoned out of the news, but like that was a domestic terrorist attack.
Right. And it wasn't just like we got a couple like retards and meth heads to like get into a white box truck and go, quote unquote, like kidnap the governor of Michigan or whatever, right? Like, this was not an op. This was basically, 10 bizarre sexual degenerates setting up an ambush, admittedly, sort of ineptly, but not to get too much into like the tism of it, but like, they were set up in such a place where they were backlit, right? They were standing so that their targets were in the middle of a well-lit parking lot in the dark with handguns, taking rifle fire from somewhere out in the dark at 100 to 150 meters away, right? They were sitting ducks. It's a genuine miracle that those officers weren't killed. And honestly, I think a big part of it is that the guys lost their nerve. Like, a bunch of guys didn't shoot. If all of them had, those guys would have been cooked.
And I'm personally, I don't take the left seriously, because for every one successful assassination, there's like 100 of them that once they have to face the reality of what they're doing, they check it out, right? They can't deal with it. And it goes to show just how delusional they are, that once they face the reality that you're probably going to die from being a retard like this, they chicken out and they run away. And the culture has a tendency to also like glorify these people when they do violent acts. Less so now that they're worried about RICO charges. But like, there's a movie about the Weather Underground coming out soon, and other leftist terrorism. the Hollywood is trying to remysticize these acts of terrorism from our past to essentially inspire a new generation to do it. And the government isn't doing anything to stop that either. So it feels like it's only going to get worse as time goes on.
Oh yeah. Well, I think that you're 100% correct. And this is sort of a self-reinforcing cycle, right? Where it's like you have, the media, you have, like leftist culture sort of glorifying and reveling in violence in like maybe an ironic way or in sort of an edgy way. Like you have people like Hassan, the whole bread tube, even like the protect trans kids, right? With a knife on it, which is,
Yeah.
Sort of obliquely threatening. And remember, right, like that increased level of political pressure, like that doesn't necessarily reach you or I. You or I might take almost an infinite amount of pressure before we decided to, do something drastic and illegal, right? But you take someone who's already a little bit, shall we say, mentally frail, right? And what do we know about like the trans community, right? It's that their rates of mental illness are, well, I would say 100%, but even according to the DSM, quite high. Like these are not stable people, and you feed them a constant, drip feed of like they're coming to get you. They're going to put you in a camp, and also the like constant approval of like, look like that. Do you remember that Kathy Griffin? This was like 2016, but she like posed for a photo shoot with like a severed bloody head of Donald Trump. And like, I guess she's typically forced to apologize, but like there is a tacit moral, there's sort of a tacit moral license given to that, right?
And the thing is, I think the public has taken away their moral permission slip at this point, and they're facing the reality that they are the baddies. To a certain degree, the only solution is to like make their worst fears reality, which will inevitably make them more violent. I think because of the laxity and laziness of previous administrations, both Democrats and Republicans, on dealing with this mounting crisis, because really this is a crisis that has been mounting for a decade since like trans kids were first invented. You see now that like basically there aren't any more, black dressed black metal listening school shooters anymore that are usually like, young nerdy white boys that go nuts. Now it's all trans people. And, to a certain degree, both of them are highly autistic and highly suggestible. So it almost suggests that the person doing this hasn't changed. It's just the dressing that they're influencers wear that they're borrowing now. They went from the sad white boy music to the trans music stuff, right? There's a certain degree of like, you're still dealing with this like highly autistic white boy, but now they just chopped off their dick instead of, cut themselves on the wrist or something.
Yeah, well, I think that's you are true in a general sense, right? Like that is still very much the statistical norm. But I will say I've been kind of interested in the rise of the female trans spree killer, because that is very, very like unique and very new. And it's hard to tell like, oh, did we just get two of those in relatively close proximity? It will never happen again. Or is that a wider signifier of kind of a new, I guess, type of these killers?
I think it's often unnoticed that estrogen makes you a little schizophrenic, and testosterone makes you think you can take on the world. And when you pump high levels of these into children, you get both types of either schizo or ubermensch retards doing terrible things. And it's almost as if maybe prepubescent children shouldn't be pumped with steroids. That's a crazy idea, I know, but maybe the government should maybe the government should criminally prosecute DSA and all these medical advisors that say this is normal when it is clearly creating abnormal things. I mean, I would like RFK to reclassify transgenderism as like a risk to harm in others, And you should probably do that to autists too. I mean, not that we should just medicate autism away, but like it's very clearly that there is a string of children with very similar traits that are doing these things when they are isolated and easily influenced. Maybe we have to cut social media off from people that are delusional. It seems to me that that would be a reasonable way to preventive action. That, like, social media is permissible for those that aren't mentally insane. And it goes, why don't we put the mentally insane in institutions anymore? Oh, there might be an abuse. Well, cool, but everybody else is suffering abuse from them now. So I don't know. It seems to me that there are very practical solutions that mitigate this crisis. Which, again, this is a decade-long crisis with the trans community, building off of an even longer crisis from like autistic loner students. Like, this goes back to the 90s, where the culture the hyper individualized delusional culture that is being built produces these freaks. And if we're not willing to deal with what causes the freaks to be created, we're only really dealing with the symptoms, not the cause. If that makes sense.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think that there is, and a lot of the discussion around this has been. I don't know why I go on the internet anymore. I just see things that make me mad. But you have people talking about like, oh, if you think this is a problem with nihilism, you're not really serious. And it's like, well, okay, look, Charlie Kirk was shot by a degenerate left-wing political terrorist. That is true. And that doesn't mean that my man read too much Nietzsche one day and then said, I'm going to be gay and do crimes. But in a broader sense, why do we have so many people engaging in these sort of like despairing acts of violence? That is a broader conversation worth discussing, right? It just frustrates me kind of to no end on that front.
I mean, okay.
No, what do you think of the other kind of, I guess, deflection technique, which has been to say, oh, this is a gun control issue, right? This is if we didn't have so many gosh dang guns, Charlie Kirk would still be alive. And, particularly many of the people have pointed out the irony. They're like, oh, Charlie Kirk said, if you're going to have guns in a free society, sometimes you have to accept that bad things are going to happen. And then he got shot. So that's funny. And like, I kind of get it. Like, there's a little bit of irony there. It actually doesn't really decrease his point. It's like a point against safetyism, right? It's like, if you're going to have any human free will at all, you're going to have to accept negative consequences for that. But it seems to me like even the gun control angle, it just doesn't seem to be holding ground really at all anymore. If you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, and I think it's because deep down every American knows that we're not in civil times anymore. I'm almost reminded of that part of once again referencing Lord of the Rings, where like Sam is upset that they're in like a swamp and there's like corpses around. It's like, oh, I'd be having tea if I was in decent places, and then Gollum goes, "You isn't in decent places," and it's to a certain degree like it's the same argument. It's like the leftist says, "Oh, it would be a wonderful world if we didn't have guns. Like it would be a decent world if we didn't have guns." It's like, you're not in a decent world. You stop being delusional. Now, like it seems to me like this problem would go away if we classified transgenderism as a psychiatric disorder, and then you couldn't get guns. Like, yeah, sure, sensible gun control. Transsexuals can't have guns because they're delusional. That's very sensible to me. I wouldn't allow like a lot of autistic people to have guns either, because like if you're delusional, if you have delusions, then a gun is not something that you should be around. Guns are for normal people that want to protect themselves from you, not you.
Well, it's also like, I saw this with Lucas Botkin. Gun autists will recognize that name. A very ran up until recently, like a very prominent firearms business, and he has clashed with the gun community, as gay as that term is, because he's not a libertarian, right? So,
Yeah.
for instance, he got in a lot of trouble for saying things about, shall we say, sexual minorities. He had a very cryptic reference in a recent live stream appearance where he said, "I don't think it was 6 million." And I have no idea what he could
Oh
be
no.
referring to there. So, point is, right, he's out there. He's a little bit of an edgy guy. I think. I don't even know what he could have been referring to. I assume it was a joke. But in all seriousness,
Yeah, it
right,
must have been
like
true.
he got into a lot of trouble with gun people who are in many cases libertarians for saying exactly that. Like, why would I want a literal insane person who has delusions, hates God, and specifically has a bone to pick with people like me to have guns? Right? This isn't some like epic, morally consistent argument. It's like, this is a very common sense thing. And like, look, man, like, I like guns. It's a hobby of mine. I like, it's something I, spend a lot of time doing, but it's like the idea that because I like it and should have free access, that I think everyone should, regardless of anything. It's like the same tactical libertarianism that conservatives often fall into, which is the like, oh, well, I can't have a preference. I can't have a prejudice. So I'll just apply everything to everyone. I care all about human rights for everyone. And it's like, it's a cope, right? It is genuinely a tactical position to avoid being called names by the left. And I think that, one of the very inspiring things about this is that it has made it very clear that there is no compromise with the left from the perspective of they view us all
Anything.
as Nazis, right? They view us all. And like, look, man, like you or I don't really have that much in common with Charlie Kirk. Like the guy seemed like a nice guy. He seemed to be an honorable man from everything I saw with deep faith. So I'm not trying to take it away from him, but like from a dispassionate observer, we don't have that much in common politically. But from the outside looking in, it's like, guess what? You're all Nazis, quote unquote. It's sort of similar to the birth of the concept of white people, right? Which is like, white doesn't really have its genesis in Europe from a certain perspective. Because it's like, well, okay, yeah, sure, you're both white, but guess what? You're both part of different German like micro sub factions, and it's the middle of the Reformation, so you guys are killing each other in the most horrific war no one remembers, right? Like there was just too much intramural conflict. But once we discover the New World, well, then there is a term for white, because it's you and some guy from France and some weird Spanish guys against an entire continent of people who want to eat you. And so that concept all of a sudden is born. And it does fall apart, right? When we try to bring it back to Europe, or we try to bring it out of that context. And so my point is, there is an artificial unity in this sort of, hated opposition, right? Where it's like, look, man, and I wrote this in my piece for the OGC. It's like, Charlie Kirk has my grandma's politics, literally. Like my grandma says a lot of the same things he does. And it's like, well, if my grandma's a Nazi, who isn't? So what's the point in trying to appease these people?
It's par for the course of their delusional mindset. Like if you're willing to delude yourself that you're something that you're not, you're gonna project that on other people. Like you see freaking bent crosses everywhere, probably. It's like these people are delusional. The reason why they call everyone but themselves Nazis is because they're delusional. The reason why they shoot normal people is because they're delusional. The reasons why they cut off their genitalia is because they're delusional. It comes back to the fact that these are delusional people with a mental illness. They shouldn't be allowed to speak in society. They shouldn't be allowed to own guns to gun people down, and they should be ostracized. They're delusional, they're crazy, and they're bringing down civilization because of it. Like this idea that these folks should have an equal say with sane, normal people that just want to grill. Like, I'm sorry. Like, no, they don't. They should be ostracized and cut off from the permissions of a civilized society because they aren't civilized and they're not social. They aren't members of a civil society.
Well, right. And it's like, look, man, I feel like obviously there's a universal value to human life in a Christian sense, right? Obviously, I pray for the salvation of all men. However, when we're talking about like equality, right? The idea that, all rights should be extended to all people is to be honest, absurd, right? It is very clear that even the concept of citizenship, right, is a recognition that, there are rights which are limited to a certain, group, right? You as an American are entitled to certain things that a guest is not. I mean, so here's an example, right? Like that Ukrainian girl that was killed. It's like, well, is she a citizen? No. So she does not have access to the same rights that you or I do. But at the same time, like she is, under our protection. She is taking our
legal
hospitality.
resident.
And so she should be protected, right? Even from, a citizen of this country. So I'm not saying this in some kind of like, radical chauvinist sense of like, American citizens can do no wrong and everyone else just, must be kind of, trampled before them. It's not my point at all. But again, it's like when you have a group of people who very clearly are insane, right? Who have delusions about themselves, who have delusions about others, who obviously are deluded enough to assume that Charlie Kirk is some sort of fascist. And it's like, look, man, I know fascists. I've met them before. They're not like Charlie Kirk. And it's the crazy delusion on top of that like Charlie Kirk is the rightmost point there is. And then if we can cut off the head of the serpent, well, it won't happen anymore. It's like, well, buckle up. Because guess what? You have just radicalized a large number of people and emboldened a large number of people as well.
Yeah. I mean, in many ways, the insensible behavior to sensible people is historically the fastest way to end your political dominance. It's like you lose power doing that. And the left is going to do a lot. They're already doing soul searching for being retarded for 4 years. Now they're going to have to, like, the Democrat Party has the problem where they want to get rid of their lunatic base, but every time they try, the base demands they go back to being lunatics. The end point of that is going to be a broken party. Like everybody last week was saying, "Oh, we're kind of worrying how Trump's going to handle the midterms." I think at this point, like Trump's going to dominate the midterms simply by not being fucking insane. Granted, like we're all people that are still waiting on all kinds of stuff from Trump, ranging from Epstein shit to what's going on with a lot of the agencies. But even that is more tolerable to lunatic people gunning down innocent people. And you saw some of that with like on various Twitter sphere posts, like, "Oh, you guys are just a bunch of pedo protectors." Like, listen, we'll deal with the Epstein stuff one way or another eventually, but we're basically looking for any side that will take away your ability to harm us at this point. And I think what the left is witnessing is like, yeah, the willingness of the average American to tolerate certain vices by their leaders just to get rid of these people from the political sphere, just to strip these people of power. In many ways, like everything ranging from like not allowing them to have guns, not allowing them to have power. It does come down to like a certain friend enemy distinction. Like it's okay to say, no, my enemy shouldn't be able to arm themselves to hurt me. That's okay to say. Even in the Christian context, when we talk about equality, it usually comes down to, like, the Bible mostly specifically says equality of the brethren, those who share in your community, not equality of the pagans coming to kill you. They get a little bit less of a say in your community.
Well, it's also like, let's sort of war game this out here. Let's say you, as a religious person, have a very genuine care for the trans community. Well, assuming that you have their true best interest at heart, we all know, right, the funny number for how many people in that community attempt to harm themselves. So why would I want them to have access to, to die in a state of, as you would believe, mortal sin, right? Like, why would I? It's for your own good, genuinely, right?
Yeah.
For my good as well. But it's like, clearly, in the same way that, you can't drive if you have severe epilepsy. It's like, well, and look, you might be a case of someone who, despite being a severe epileptic, has no problem, right? You're just a regular like Mario Andretti, right? As long as there aren't flashing lights, and fair enough. But again, when we're dealing with rules, right, on a national level, it's like, well, there will be edge cases, right? And
Yeah.
it stinks, right? It's difficult. It's why ruling is kind of a sober thing. But at the same time, it's like, I'm sorry, we have to deal with things on the general level, right? What's healthy for a civilization. And to me, the people I find most irritating in all of this are those whining about consistency, like, oh, why are you who argued for the Second Amendment, who argued for gun rights, saying that those should be taken away from other people, or why are you who argued about cancel culture fine with people losing their jobs? And well, there's two answers, which is
yeah.
No, respond to that.
The answer is sovereign makes the exception, and we as sovereign citizens are going to make an exception for the insane people that are threatening us. Like, I'm sorry, but like the Constitution is for citizens of a sane moral society, not for lunatics.
So, Luthemplaer, when you say sovereign citizen, you mean you are
no, not that.
Only under only admiralty law?
not the libtarded libertarian way of understanding that.
This might be the weirdest compliment you've ever gotten, but I think you could make a magnificent sovereign citizen. Like, you would be hilarious.
Oh, no. I couldn't deal with it. I mean, I act like a sovereign. How often have I pissed off everybody from all political corners with my shenanigans? It's like a certain degree of like I can't tolerate bullshit. I can't tolerate like the death worship. It happens a little bit on the right from time to time. Like I know it's gonna be offensive, but I'm not a fan. I'm a Catholic. I don't really believe in like the death sentence, but I do believe in exiling these people to like freaking a Madagascar desert island somewhere far away from our civilization. I just feel like the left has become a loony bin. A lot of Democrat insiders will admit this if you wine and dine them a little bit, that they don't know how to deal with the loony bin that they've created. They don't know how to contain this mind virus, and they would like to get rid of it as much as we would without losing their political capital. In many ways, you have to offer them the off-ramp. Like, obviously, these are left-wing terrorists, but you don't have to call them liberal. It's the only thing liberal is how much they want to kill, like liberally kill you with bullets. I don't know if you saw my
liberal.
I don't know if you saw my Benjamin Boyce interview like a month ago or something. Did you hear that?
No, I didn't. I although I will say, Benjamin Boyce has been talking to all of my friends, and I've really been enjoying it. But I haven't had a chance to listen to that one yet.
I made the argument
actually,
that
my wife liked it, so she recommended it.
Yeah, I made the argument there that if you look at the way in which the far left acts, what does it want? It wants homogenous, walled communities of itself. It acts structurally and functionally far right. It just dresses itself in far left clothing. And there may be an argument, if you want to play the game, that like, well, I've started calling these movements ethno-localism. They're these trans terrorist networks. They're ethnic localism extremists. They want everybody in their little commune to be like them, wall off everybody else. To a certain degree, you could say they're far right if you wanted to. Like, well, they want closed borders. They don't want cis white men. They're very ethnically homogenous with themselves. Maybe they are far right if you wanted to play the dialectic game. But in terms of like actual structure, in terms of how they organize themselves, there's a certain like they're not really they're not really egalitarian or anything like that anymore. They behave like closed societies. And if you escape the right-left dichotomy and just say, well, some closed societies are good and some closed societies are bad. Or you could say, no, we don't want this closed society stuff. We're Americans. Whatever political random set of parameters will enable you to justify utterly destroying this movement. I don't really care. It has to be destroyed before it causes more harm to average people. I would just say that this is like one in a long number of terrorist attacks by a very obvious group of people that so far both Trump and Biden were unwilling to prosecute out of fear. Maybe it's a fear of, oh, well, after them too hard, they'll radicalize even more, or maybe it's a fear of reprisal. But like, listen, you can take this entity down overnight, but very simply, just raid Reddit and Discord servers, Control F these keywords, find these accounts and IP addresses, and arrest them overnight. It can't be more than a few thousand people. They all want to organize and kill people. They're terrorists. Just fucking treat them like terrorists. They are. They are terrorists. It's not hard to deal with it. You did it for 20 years in a foreign country. You can do it here and maybe be a little bit better than fucking doing nothing at all. Sorry for cursing. It pisses me off so much.
Oh no, I mean I consider I am equally as aggravated, right? And that's struggling for words here to kind of thread the needle between expressing myself and not saying something that will get me kicked off the internet. But like, in addition to just the sheer like lunacy of like the left wing base, what bothers me so much is the just absolute total mismanagement of it. Right? That you take places like, like Seattle or Portland or like Los Angeles that are, to be honest, very nice places, right? They have a lot going for them. And you fill them up with miserable trash. You just make them impossible to live in decently without spending millions of dollars a year to do so. And then I go to like real progressive rural enclaves, right? Like Maine or something like that, which is a very beautiful place. And I look around and they're airdropping tens of thousands of Somalis there. And I'm like, you can't even let this be good, right? You have to make everything horrible wherever you touch it. And again, it's why when I say like the left needs to be destroyed, it's like, this is an entropic force. They're making everything horrible. And look, like I'm not a Republican and I don't love the GOP. I don't love Donald Trump, but it's like, hey man, as incompetent and awful and subservient to foreign interests as the man may be, and he certainly is, it's like, well, okay, what are our options, man? Like genuinely, what are our options? And let's also be honest, all of those exact adjectives could be applied to, Willie Brown's girlfriend.
Yeah. Who?
Kamala Harris. She did some consulting, I think.
Okay, sorry, I didn't hear the word Willie Brown. No, I mean, yeah, I think we all long for the days where our main political arguments were the tax rate or like the import rate. Like these were simpler times. Now we have to deal with politics because of the inability or unwillingness to deal with this cancer. The politics now have to come down to: are we going to stop terrorists from destroying our communities? Or are we going to remove like third world trash that hasn't been civilized from our communities? Or are we just going to accept the fact that we just want slaves and we don't care who gets killed? Because if that's the main political dialectic, like, well, I'm sorry, but not to say bad things to the South, but like we already played that roadmap and we know how it ends. like the pro slave, pro abandon the poor white communities. That kind of, I don't want to offend the South people, the Southerners that are listening, but like the greatest, I've made this point a few times. Jay, do you know that the demographics of the modern United States is closer to the Confederacy than the Union in 1860?
Yes.
Yeah. So the biggest weakness of the Confederacy, other than a lack of a strong federal government, was its demographics. Was its split demographics. Not only was it only I think 55% white, But like most of those white people were poor, didn't own any slaves, and were like kind of not invested in this war of the elite to keep their property, right? They didn't give a shit. And if you are now creating the United States itself to operate like the Confederacy, you're going to have the same problems that the Confederacy had. Split loyalty due to demographic and a lack of interest by the common people in what the elite are up to because it doesn't concern them. You can't run a society that way. It will be replaced and attacked and conquered by a more unified federal entity, be that a federal government to come or who knows, a powerful governor that just says, you know what, fuck this. I don't know which will happen, but like you, regardless of if it's Trump or Biden or whoever comes next, you can't run a federal government that acts like the Confederacy. It will fall like the Confederacy. It will fall victim to its demographic disunity, its class disunity, and it will fall apart to shit as all the factionism starts looting it. I mean, the amount of looting the Confederate generals did, as well as the Union general, like everybody was looting the Confederacy. The dollar value went to shit, and that's going to happen to our country if we don't seriously rectify the fact that, yeah, I mean, like if you look at the statistics, we're more like the Confederacy than the Union. We've become a second Confederacy, and when a new Union arises, it will easily destroy this failed state. And if that's what you want, I mean, okay, but it's coming. It's not something you can avoid because that demographic reality has consequences for how your government operates. It's just something I keep thinking about. It's something I mentioned in the Boyce interview where like this country is starting to go the way of the Confederacy.
Well, I think that that's a good note to end on. You've successfully, I think, made everyone angry. Well, dude, where can people find you? They want to read more of your work.
Substack, because Twitter is hell and I often am not there.
Yeah, I've been writing more on Substack. I've done 2 op-eds this month, one of which has not come out yet, but it is finished. I shall be writing more. So yeah, definitely check out your Substack, mine too. I mean, look, if you pay me, you get the episodes early and ad free, but also my articles are free and they're there is probably the best thing I can say about them. Yeah, man, I'll be sure to link that. Other than Substack, you can throw me a few bucks on Patreon, Subscribestar, and Gumroad. I think that's the other 2 for the episodes early and ad free. Oh, I've been informed by my sponsor, Axios Remote Fitness and Coaching, that I am very bad at advertising. Yeah, I guess I am. Axios Remote Fitness and Coaching, long-term sponsor. They help me out a lot, and their product is excellent. I use it. I've been using it for 3 years now, I think. I can't remember, 2 years. My brother-in-law uses it. My family members use it because it's good. It's very helpful. It'll help you lose weight, which, I've been to some of these conferences and you guys need help. Again, Luthemplaer, I really appreciate it. And everyone at home, keep your head up. Life can't last forever. Good night.